Hi guys, so today we're going to do section 3.3, but before we do that, hit pause and try out these two warm-up problems. Please note that the arrows here on these two lines in number 1 and the blue arrows in number 2 mean that those pairs of lines are parallel. So go ahead and hit pause and try out these two problems. All right, before you even talk about the parallel lines, looking at number 1, 65 degrees here is supplementary to angle number 1 and also angle number 4. They make up this whole straight angle here. So angle 1, 180 minus 65 will be 115. Alright, so likewise, angle 4 is 115 degrees, and by vertical angles, angle 3 is congruent to angle 2, so that one is 65 degrees. And now you can use any type of those four postulates we learned. Corresponding angles are congruent, alternate interior angles are congruent, alternate exterior angles are congruent, or same side interior are supplementary. I would use the first three, talking about congruence. The easiest way, because of these parallel markings here, you can just copy all four of the angles. Well, I can't say 4 and write 5 at the same time, apparently. All four of the angles using corresponding angles are congruent. All right, number 2, one step harder instead of just filling in all of them. What we are going to do for this one, we are going to find the value of x given that our two lines are parallel. So hit pause and find what x is. All right, these two angles are corresponding angles. So we are going to set 135 equal to x minus 30. So x is going to equal 165. Apparently, Smart Notebook doesn't want to write that way. Weird. Okay. I'll just underline it, 165. All right, now let's move on to section 3.3. Proving lines are parallel. A lot of the same stuff. However, we are going to be talking about the converse of the four postulates that we dealt with in the previous two sections. So write down section 3.3, prove lines are parallel, and then take a minute and write down postulate 16. So corresponding angles converse. If you think back to when we learned about a conditional statement, an if-then statement, and then we learned how to write the converse, contrapositive, and inverse. The converse was when we switched the hypothesis and conclusion. So this postulate is telling us that the converse of the original postulate of if two lines are parallel, then the corresponding angles cut by a transversal are congruent was the original. This is saying the converse is true. So if you have two lines cut by a transversal and the corresponding angles are congruent, then the two lines are parallel. Take a minute and write that down, including the figure over here. All right, example number 1, using that. Write down this statement here and the figure. So we're finding the value of x. That makes line M parallel to line N. That is what that symbol means, parallel. This is very similar to number 2 on the do now problem, but number 2, I gave you that they were parallel. Here they're asking you to find x to make them parallel. Same math involved. So we are setting 71 equal to 2x plus 3. In here, They use the parentheses just because they don't want you to get confused by the degree symbol. I don't use parentheses. I don't put the degree when I'm doing mine over here. If you're following along this way, I guess I can do it that way. All right, to solve for x, subtract 3 on both sides. So 68 equals 2x. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 34. So the value of x that would make those two lines parallel is 34. All right, a checkpoint. Hit pause and solve this one out. All right, so set these two values equal and solve. X will equal 21 is your answer. All right, so that was corresponding angle converse. Now we have the other 3. If you are given alternate interior angles are congruent, you are allowed to assume that the lines are parallel. Alternate exterior, parallel, and same side interior or consecutive interior, like your book calls it, if they are supplementary. So be careful, make sure that they're supplementary. Hit pause and write down all 3 of these theorems and also the figure that pertains to them. All right, let's look at an example here. How can you tell whether the sides of the flag of Nepal are parallel? All right, so it's a little bit hard to see, but these 2 lines here are cut by the transversal, the diagonal here. I wish that I was able to use different colors, but not for this part here. So looking at these 2 lines and these angles, what's the relationship that these 2 angles have based on those 2 lines cut by the transversal? If you said alternate interior, you are correct. So alternate interior angles. And they gave us 1 arc each, so they are congruent. You are allowed to assume that the sides of the flag are parallel based on the theorem number 3.4. I'm not going to make you memorize the theorem numbers, but just wanted to state. All right, here, the checkpoint. Can you prove that lines A and B are parallel given the information the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180 degrees? What are the relationship between angle 1 and angle 2 in the figure? They are consecutive interior angles, and you were told that they are adding to 180, which is supplementary. So this is yes, and it is by the consecutive interior angle converse, so theorem 3.6. But we're going to write consecutive interior converse theorem. All right, and the last thing we're going to do today, just going to go through this proof together. So, looking at the figure, we are told in these directions here that line A is parallel to line B. So once they tell you that, draw in some arrows to signify that they're parallel. Once we do that, a transversal that's cutting a transversal that intersects with 2 parallel lines, we are allowed to say all 4 of those things. Corresponding angles are congruent. Alternate interior angles are congruent. Alternate exterior angles are congruent. And same side interior angles are supplementary. If they didn't tell us that, we cannot assume that. So using that, focus up here because those are two intersection points dealing with the transversal line X with two parallel lines, lines A and B. So angle 1 and angle 2 are corresponding angles, so we are allowed to put that they are congruent. All right. Then focus on what they gave us. Angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent. So angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent, but angle 1 and angle 2 are also congruent. So all three of them are congruent with each other. Once we have this in our figure here, angle 2 and angle 3. We don't need angle 1 anymore. Get rid of this. We're focusing on angle 2 and angle 3. What relationship do angle 2 and angle 3 have? If you said alternate exterior, you are correct. And since alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the two parallel lines, the two lines that are intersecting that same transversal are parallel given the theorem that is the alternate exterior angle converse theorem that we just learned. So that is the order of which you would solve those out. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next class. Thanks, guys.